Hey, real quick before we start this video, on Tuesday, March 4th, we have our second triple win-a-box for the Fusion World card game. Online client, top 8 prizing, and $8 entry. We have a couple spots left, so make sure to check it out if you guys haven't already, and enjoy the video. Hey everyone, Eggman here with another video, and today I have an updated tier list for the FB05 format of the Dragon Ball Super card game Fusion World, the new adventure set that we got 2 weeks ago. And in the last 2 weeks, I've probably played over 100 games of Fusion World. This format is just super fun. I think there's a lot of decks that are super viable right now, and there's just a lot of different decks to build and try, and I've just been having a lot of fun as well. So a couple of things before we get started. First, if you guys are new to the channel, please make sure to hit that like and subscribe. We make a lot of content here, and we do a lot of live streams, including this Friday. We will be doing our run for the first anniversary tournament that they have on the online client. Also, if you guys want to see any of my deck lists, you can find them on my website, Eggman Events, which is linked in the description as well. I also do tournament deck list and just have a lot of data here, and I'm going to continue to update this as best as I can, so you can keep coming back to it and maybe find some different builds or other resources as well. So make sure to check that out, and I think it's been a really good resource. I try to do my best to keep it as up to date as possible. But again, I've been really enjoying this game right now. It's been super fun, and I have to kind of like tone myself back, like, hey, I've got other responsibilities. I got to show some love to other card games at the same time. And but Fusion World has been, I haven't been sick of it at all. So anyways, for this tier list, we're going to do our best to keep it as accurate as possible. It's obviously pretty opinionated, and we haven't had any big events. Our first big event is going to be at the end of March in Pasadena, which I will be at too. So if you guys are going to be there, let me know. I'd love to say hi to y'all as well. But we do have the tier list I made on day 0. So, this was 2 weeks ago. This was, 100 plus games ago in the format. And I did kind of a bit of a cop out, right? I said, for each color, what's the best deck, I think, in each color. And then from competitive to potential to unlikely from there. So a little bit kind of vague on what the kind of tiers were, but just kind of what my thoughts were for each one of these decks as we were jumping on into it. So that's the old tier list. We're going to make a new one. It's going to be best decks in format. Spoilers, I've got a couple that I think are just very strong and are like a little bit better than anyone else. It might be a better tag to say it's like tier 1.5 or like 0.5, but we're going to have that there. We're going to have tier 1, so these are decks that I think are very viable, and I would expect that in a like top 16 situation. I wouldn't be too surprised that those decks make it there. Tier 1.5, I think, are decks that are just like a little bit undertuned, or we haven't found like the build that makes sense for it yet, but it could be viable. And then unlikely is just unlikely there. And I'm actually going to fill that up real quick with just decks that I think are unlikely. These shouldn't be a surprise to any of you guys. There might be one or two that you're like, oh, actually, I think I've got a really good build. And I'm not going to say that that's not likely, like it's 100% dislikely. It's just unlikely. These are just decks that I think that there are either better versions of the ones that exist already, or there's not a lot of reasons to really play them right now, and I have them in this kind of tier right there. But they can get better, and I could be wrong on these ones, but these are just ones I haven't played against at all, or if I have, I just felt like there isn't really a really good way to play it. And I'm not very surprised that these are in this unlikely spot. So if there's any that I'm missing, I think the only one I would say is maybe Trunks Future, like maybe Cell. I know those two. Ginyu, I always say this is like one of the worst decks in the format. It does have some new support, but I haven't been seeing people rock it. And we're going to keep that there. But don't let me say that your deck is trash, all right? You guys can try to make it as best as you can. I don't want to discourage anyone from creativity, but these are my thoughts for just decks that I wouldn't expect to see really any tournament tops in our recent format. So there we go there. Anyways, I'm just going to go kind of by release order through the rest of these leaders. We're going to start off with Vegeta, and honestly, Vegeta is just super solid. I know that it's kind of like a worse version of Vegito sometimes because it's a 35k leader on the backside on offense compared to a 40k leader, but it still gets the job done. Like, blue just is really good right now. Still, you can take advantage of like using your peel-off loops. There are a lot of decks that are just trying to awaken early, and like Vegeta doesn't have to. And if you do get awakened, your opponent has to like deal with 35ks. I will say, and I'll maybe even cheat too. I'm gonna put Vegito right here as well. These decks are just really strong. I think blue is a really strong color still in this game with how much resource it has. If I was going to reorder it, I think Vegito is just maybe like a little bit better. The maybe better way to say it is that the ceiling for Vegito is a little bit higher, but also like the floor is a little bit lower in the sense that, everyone's milled their super combos off the Vegeta, right? It feels really bad, and not seeing that throughout the format. But we also have like 8 super combos because we have the new extra card too. So it's really what you prefer. I don't think that strictly saying that it's wrong to play Vegeta over Vegito or vice versa. It just kind of comes down to personal preference, and both these are very strong in their own way. I would probably give the edge if needed to say which one was better to Vegito, but I think Vegeta is perfectly fine in this format too. So we're going to put both those right there. Next up, we've got Broly. We're going to put him in tier 1.5. I've been seeing some pretty creative builds with Broly running around right now, since he's the only leader that is in the game that ramps based off its leader effect on Awakening. That's something that's pretty unique, and it being a 25k base on the backside is strong. There also is a way, like the 7-drop Goku secret rare is broken, right? The deck that I think that's best with it, like you can really get to use this effect just very easy in Broly, specifically because you go from 4 life to 3 with your Awakening ability, and then it's very easy for you to go down to 2, especially since we have our 1 energy self-awakeners in this deck too. So if you're just really aggressive, Broly, being able to swing 30k on your front, your backside is pretty strong. We just have so many ways for us to self-awaken right now. Playing Nappa as well to ramp and awaken, as well as be a 30k swing. I think Broly has some really good features for it right now. So it does, run out of steam sometimes, or sometimes if your opponent's able to stabilize, you can't get there. But I think the deck is still pretty good, and it's probably the best it's been in a little bit. And the fact that Android 1718 is just, it's clearly the best ramp deck in the game, right? And if you're the second best ramp deck, you're just not as good, right? Like, since you have to be like the best to get to 8 energy first, 1718 just does it way better. So because of that, I do think that it's something that helps differentiate what Broly's doing in this meta by having this more kind of aggressive deck that I've been seeing. And I think there are some ways for it to be pretty solid. So we have that there. We also have Frieza, which Frieza got like a good amount of like weird support cards, and I think Yellow in general has like a really good card pool. Obviously, we have the 4-drop secret rare, which Frieza can just restand every turn and just you never lose it. It's just impossible for any deck to interact with it with the current card pool, which is really strong. It's a deck that just gets a lot of late game value. I think also 6-drop Frieza is really good right now. So to play more defensively in like a Frieza control deck, I think is really possible. And we're going to see a couple other yellow decks that I think are just a little bit stronger right now as is, but Frieza has like so much potential for value right now. If there's a build that just kind of outshines others, I could definitely see Frieza bumping up into a couple spots as well. So I'm just going to leave it right here, but Frieza, again, I think is in a really good spot for what this format is too. So next up, we've got set 1 Goku. We put Star Deck 1 Goku in Unlikely. I think it's just the plus 5k in both turns is just like a little bit too cheesy for what it is. It's not consistent. Like, there's a lot of removal still. You just don't get as much value from it. But this one, there's kind of like another like aggro cheese deck that exists with the Chen Shinhans. I've seen a couple people use it with some mild success. It's not something I've seen recently on ladder. I think most people are not awakening very early, and I think it's something that was good in the first couple days when each one of these new leaders you want to try to awaken as soon as possible to get their value. But this deck was really good at punishing for doing so. So I'm gonna leave it right here in tier 1.5. I think there might be an avenue for this deck to be good still, but it's just not something I've seen consistently either. So our other set 1 red deck, we've got Beerus, and I'm going to put this in tier 1.5 as well. This is probably the worst Beerus has been since release. I haven't seen a lot of people play it right now. I think there's some better red decks that are more control-y at the same time, and it's something that Beerus definitely needs to awaken as soon as possible, because you just feel like you're doing nothing on the front side with just having like this 20k crit swing, which just is the worst thing for this leader. If the front side of this leader was 15k attack, I think it would probably bump up to a better leader in this format. But with it being the 20k crit and this format being what it is, not a lot of decks are really phased by it, I think, as much as we used to. So and then other than that, like, again, like, so many decks are really good at punishing people who awaken early from being at 4 or 3 life, and because of that, Beerus is really, really handicapped, I think, in that sense. So we're gonna put him in 1.5. I haven't really played against any Beerus players since we've dropped this new set. I think it's still a fine deck, but I just haven't seen as many people on it. So, and then talking about our set 1 crit leaders, we've got Goku Black. honestly, this might be bumped up to tier one. I did play against a couple, and there are some good builds with it. You did get some support with some Zamasu stuff. I think blue is just still really good at like being able to be a late game deck with the control with Pilaf. And it does stink that you don't get to, you really do want to awaken with Goku Black, but I do find that blue just has a better late game and you don't care about that as much. And you like once your opponent awakens you, you just get so much value throughout the game. And then if your opponent kind of just slow rolls you and doesn't awaken you, you have a lot of cards to take advantage of the fact that you're at 6-7 plus energy at the end of it. So I think this deck is actually pretty good. It might be better than Beerus, and it might be even worth going to tier 1, but we're going to keep it in 1.5. Tier 1, we're going to keep 17-18 here. This deck is pretty good. I will say that it does kind of falter against Majin Buu, which we'll talk about in a little bit, but this deck is still super solid in this meta. I think it's strong. 17-18 is still really broken. I think it's to the point where you kind of have to see two of them back to back to be able to stabilize against some decks that exist right now. And I think that it does have a bad matchup into one of the best decks in the format, if not just the best, like the most popular deck in the format. And we're going to leave that there. Cooler, I'm going to leave. It's probably at the end of tier 1.5. I could even maybe put this on in unlikely, but man, I love this deck too much, and we're just going to leave it there. So this is me bumping it up too. So we also have this Son Goku. It's fine. I meant to maybe put this on unlikely. We're just going to leave it in 1.5, but I think the deck is just okay. There's better red decks. Actually, you know what? I'm going to bump it down. I forgot to put this in area at the beginning of the video. It belongs right there in my mind. I don't think this deck is doing good. I have been talking though, like I think Kefla can come back at more than one copy in the next little bit. I think red's probably been like the weakest has been since release, and that because of that, I think Kefla is where we're kind of in a spot where a lot of modern cards in FB05 can have kind of caught up to the amount of value that Kefla has offered. Though at the same time, like Son Goku being able to play Kefla for one and then something else is, I think, a little bit too strong. So I think the only thing that's really keeping Kefla, limited to one is the existence of this leader. But if we end up getting that card unrestricted in any time in the future, I could see this being a lot better and red decks in general. So we're gonna leave that there. Next up, we've got Zamasu, which honestly I think this leader is really good right now. I think I put it as like the best deck in the blue color at the beginning of this format. I sure did right there. And it's just still good. It's still really good. It's the most control heavy version of blue that we have right now. The fact that we're 25k on the backside, the fact that there's so many different ways to take advantage of it. Naturally, we get to 20 cards into our drop by the end of the game by just being very slow and patient, and because of that, we can take advantage of some of the new cards we got from FB05. So I think Zamasu is likely, if not the best it's ever been, just very strong. I think it's maybe the best version of blue right now. It's a very slow, control-y, kind of lame game at times, but it gets there, and you sometimes your opponent just can't overcome the amount of like control and defense and just value you get from a deck like this one too. So that's kind of my thoughts for Zamasu, but I do think there's another blue deck that's a little bit better right now. And then for yellow, we're going to continue with Vegeta. I think this deck is really great. The fact that yellow just has good cards right now, and the new options we got from, or extra cards we got from this set helps Vegeta a lot. They're just really defensive oriented. The fact that we have 4-drop Frieza in this deck, the fact that a lot of decks are really affected by 6-drop Frieza that we can play. This Vegeta is just in a really good spot. I don't really know what else to say with it. It is kind of like slow. It's a grindy leader, and you have to get to the late game, so you're not winning anything very quickly. But there's some decks that just literally can't overcome how much defensive properties a deck like this one has. So I don't see this deck very often, but I often see it winning, and I think it's in a good spot for what our format looks like as well. Next up, we've got Jiren, and honestly, like I thought this leader was out of the contention for the meta right now. And I know I wasn't the only one. I know a lot of people saw the 4-drop Secret Rare Frieza and like, it's over. Jiren's done. He's out of the format. The 4-drop, no one should run that card anymore. This red leader is just like, its entire functionality as a leader has gone away. And it's just not the case, I find. I think it's still very good. I think it's one of the better red decks that exist right now still, which I'm surprised about, but just based on seeing other people playing it and doing well with it, I think it still deserves a spot in this meta. It's maybe not as strong as it used to be, but it still does really good against some other decks, including some potential decks that are in the best deck and format spot. And that's something I think that you can't really take away from Jiren. So we're going to put it in tier one. I think the deck is still in a really, really good spot. And in the first spot in the best deck and format, we're going to put the the Halo Coup, Angel Coup, Dead Coup, FB03 Goku, whatever you want to call it. This deck is really strong still. It got no cards from FB05, but the fact that this deck just generates resources better than anything else. The fact that you can go kind of wide with your removal or just really tall with your removal is good. If it is something that is really specific on how you play and like just combo your deck and stuff, but if you are the best player in the room with this deck, you're going to go very, very far. It's just something that I think like you get so much energy and resource, and like the biggest thing is like your plays are so flexible in this deck that you can really do whatever you want as long as you see the path and you can get to the other side of it. So I think that's something that's pretty unique with Goku. I think it's very strong right now, and there's a lot of decks that just have a hard time answering what this is trying to do as well. So I think it's one of the best decks in the format. I think I thought like, oh, there's just so much other ways to gain value that Goku can't stand around in this format like it used to, and incorrect. It's just very, very solid and very present in this format too. So next up we've got Son Goku GT, which I'm going to put in tier one. I think this deck is still viable, and we can kind of talk about honestly all three black decks real quick at the same time. I really don't know which one's better. They're all kind of like in this nebulous like tier one ish area where they all kind of are built the same. We'll talk about maybe the other black deck baby in a moment, but these are all the same. All the cards in these decks are really generic. Gogeta is like the best one for like late game value. Son Goku GT is like the best one for finishing the game, and then Bardock's like the best one for just value, like generically, right? So I've been seeing people play all three of these, and I feel like they've been in like the same kind of success right now. I wouldn't know which one I would say was better. I'd say the biggest miss is that I thought Gogeta was just awful, and I still am upset. I still am upset that it doesn't draw on Awakening. I feel like that was such a nerf for this leader, and maybe I'll regret that later down the road, but it's just a really strong deck when you get the marker every turn, and I just feel like there are more combos that I wasn't aware of, but also at the same time, if your opponent doesn't self-awaken you, you just lose like so much momentum and power, and it's tough for this deck to kind of like establish a board in the cases that you are. So we're gonna leave it right there. I think the deck is still very strong, and all three of these are. I wouldn't fault anyone for saying one of these is better than the other. I think they're all very close to the same power level, and it just kind of goes down to what your preferred kind of play style is for these three. So that's there. And then next up, we've got Son Goku Daima, the Star Deck one. I think this leader is really good right now. I think honestly, as of this recording, it's a little bit underrated. It's been my favorite leader to play as of right now, and likely what I'm playing in the anniversary tournament for my rounds for it. It just has like flexibility for a lot of different board states. It's something that its removal is very good. It's obviously not as good as Beerus at removing cards, but it is good enough for what this format is that you can generally find ways to remove something on your opponent's board every turn while establishing some of your own pressure too. So the 4-drop Glorio has been fantastic, and yeah, it's a little bit better in the other Goku, but I think this Goku does like it's a 5k difference, which ends up being like a 10k difference over two attacks, but that doesn't end up mattering as much as you think. It's mostly the fact that you have a card that gives your opponent minus 5k on their leader and attacks twice. That's the bigger thing than necessarily attacking 35k twice into a 15. It's better to just kind of have the sequencing and like the removal power that you have in the Star Deck Goku than just the flat 10k you get from this one, which sometimes you have a hard time using this effect every turn. You can always use this Goku's effect almost every turn, which is just more flexible and just stronger, I think, overall. So I've been really liking that one. The FB05 Goku, it's probably one of my least favorite red leaders right now. I'm going to put it in tier 1.5. I think it's honestly, I do think this leader is just strictly better in most scenarios. This one can be like a little bit more aggressive leaning, but I feel like it runs out of juice more often than not. And this is just like the better leader between the two. almost inherent, like almost like down the line. Like the plus 10k from this one doesn't matter as much as like the plus 10k difference you get with this and how more flexible you can get with it. So I think that's just something that's just way stronger. So we got only a couple leaders left, which means we've got Majin Buu Evil. This is like one of the weirdest things for me from this is that, you know, Majin Buu Evil was my favorite deck in FB04. It was really strong. It got like a little bit of support that doesn't like really change how the deck works. But then it's just really good. It's just really good. And I think the biggest reason for it is that the decks that people are playing are really revolving around like having a big hand size. So like your hand destruction that you get almost exclusively from the Majin Buu Evil decks are is just really good. It's just really solid for it. And then if your opponent just awakens very early on 5 energy, being able to play 5-drop Buu double strike with the Bobbity and then the 30k attack twice Buu, it's like the most like it's the best end game pressure that people have to face, right? You have two 30k swings, a 20k swing, and a 35k swing without any energy or like combo input, right? So if your opponent goes down to 3, all you have to do is you have to hit them down to 2, and then your double strike just goes and wins the game from there. So it's just the amount of attacks you get and how big they are. It makes it very difficult for, I think, a lot of decks to handle that. It means that they can't awaken early. And if they don't awaken early, they just kind of lose out on how much value you get from being able to just put pressure. And they don't, you know, they're a little bit like slower on what their value is as well. So you guys probably know this. If you guys are at high rank, you see a lot of Majin Buu Evils. It is definitely one of the decks to beat in this format and just very strong right now, despite it like not getting a lot of support. Like the only like you add like a couple copies of Frieza. Sometimes you play like the Janemba. The actual Majin Buu card you get from the set you don't play, which is kind of funny. And but it's just like in a really good spot, I think, for what this format's like. So we got that there. 3 more decks, and we do have pretty much 3 of my favorite decks right now as well. We've got the Baby 1, or sorry, Baby 2, which I think it's still, this is likely just the best version of Black. I don't know. I really don't know. This one you play a lot differently, and it's something that at least like based on the fact that we have a lot of cards that are only like machine mutant cards or only work with it, I think Super Baby 2 is like slightly better with the amount of value you get. And like your opponent doesn't really want to awaken you in the mid game because of the value you get from your extra combos. So this deck is definitely better at punishing decks that awaken early. If your opponent's playing like a grindier game, I think Gogeta is better with the amount of value you can get. So it really just comes down to personal flavor. This one is definitely way different for how you can build it and that kind of stuff, but we're going to leave that there. Goku has been one of my favorite decks, and I still haven't kind of made my favorite like the solidest build I can for this, and I've been trying some new stuff, but it's generally just really good. It's just generally a really good deck. I did kind of guess like when I started like with my first tier list that this deck was going to get like a little bit worse as we got on in this format, because people are going to stop giving you free value and ending you on 2 life every turn. But with that even in mind, I think there's like some ways to make this like a little bit more value oriented, to make it like difficult for your opponent to really, you know, how much pressure do we apply? Because if they give you too much pressure, you get a lot of advantage, and then if they don't give you enough advantage, like you just don't lose. So like it's kind of a weird deck that your opponent really has to adjust to different play styles and different builds, and it's been a lot of fun. And just the fact that it's a different green deck, right? Green has been like so ramp oriented since the release, which is fine for like an identity. But when we've had a set 1 leader that's just been always like since set 2, the best way to ramp at all, like there's no contention, right? Like all the other green leaders we've had, like Piccolo and Cell, they kind of ramp, but not as good at 17 as 17, 18, so you just don't play it. We have like Vegeta, which is trying to be like aggressive, but it's not doing a good job at it. So Son Goku being able to be kind of like a middle ground and have its like own different like gameplay, I think is really important. So I do like that deck there. And then Janemba just being, I don't know, I feel I almost want to put it in 1.5. Really, I almost do. I really almost do. I think most people have figured out that this deck does have like a lot of potential for value, but it's underperforming, right? I at the beginning of this format, I did put it in like the best deck in color, right? And I just don't know if it really like obviously I think Majin Buu Evil is better than it right now, right? It just can get some more value, and in the fact that in most of the Janemba builds that are running, do end up playing the Majin Buu cards because it's a really good finisher, and it just feels like it's a worse copy of Majin Buu Evil because of that. So I'm gonna put it in like this tier 1. I think the deck is really good. I think people kind of are going back to the drawing boards on like what's the best way to build this deck and take advantage of like getting your 2 additional energy every turn. But it's just kind of like in a weird spot. I think most people are just kind of like, where this wasn't working out as much as I want. Like self awakening to 4 early and getting like my extra energy plays has been really strong. But then we just kind of run out of resources late game, which has been kind of tough for the deck. So I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it. I think there's a lot of different ways to play Janemba, and I need to kind of circle back to it. I just have been less interested compared to like the red Goku or even like the green Goku. I think those have been really fun, and I've been focusing a lot on those. But I do want to move back to Janemba, and I think there are some definitely great ways to play it as well. But this is going to be it for the tier list. If you guys are jumping back to this part of it, which based on my analytics, you guys are, this is kind of how I'm feeling about it. These aren't like super organized in tiers either. I think these are generally where people are at. But notably, I would say that everything in Tier 1, I've played probably a handful of games from this format starting, and I've been seeing a lot of people on it. Tier 1.5, it's been kind of waning from there. Like Goku Mini, I saw like a lot of people at the beginning of the format, and then they just kind of disappeared. I've been seeing more people on Goku Black, interestingly enough, and also like more people on Frieza. And then Unlikely, I don't think I've played against any of these. I played against, I think, one Piccolo, and that was it. All these other leaders, maybe one Ginyu. Maybe I played against one Ginyu, but everyone else I haven't really played against either. So we'll see what this format continues to develop into. This is something that I really like about Fusion World, is that it's a global release, so these formats change almost like on a weekly basis as we try to find new builds and different ways to play it. And I've been really happy with what this format looks like as well. So that's going to be it for me. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. Make sure to check out my tournament that I have next week as well, and we'll catch you all next time.